Welcome to the Officio Spotlight on Procurement podcast. My name is Simon Lipscomb, and thank you very much for listening. Today, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Victoria Cope. Victoria is the Commercial Director at the UK Ministry of Defence Digital Organisation, a role that she's held now for about the last 2.5 years. She's previously held roles in the government commercial function and a number of procurement and supply chain roles within the BAE Systems organisation. She also holds non-executive roles in a number of other organisations, including the Inspiring Leadership Foundation, World Commerce and Contracting, and the Air League. So, Victoria, firstly, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. Just as a starting point, I guess for people in the UK, the name Ministry of Defence and particularly Defence Digital, I guess, would be understood. But for lots of our audience in the rest of the world, it's maybe not an organisation they'd be familiar with. So perhaps we could start with asking, what is Defence Digital and kind of what is your role within that organisation?
Well, I'm happy to, and thank you for having me today. So Defence Digital is part of the Department of State in the UK government, which is the Ministry of Defence. So it's all about how do we defend our nation and protect our citizens in the UK and also help the nation prosper. So Defence Digital itself acquires all the digital capabilities to deliver both back of office support, but more importantly, our frontline warfighting support in a digital domain, whether you're using technology to communicate, to look at how we make decisions in the warfighting environment, and doing that across the different domains of air, land, sea, space, and cyber as well. So really quite an exciting place to work.
Amazing. Given the global scenario, which seems to be in a state of flux, there's a lot of things happening in the globe. I'm assuming from your role may have changed as a result of that. I mean, is there different focus, different kind of agendas, pace to your role now as opposed to previously?
So I think digital has always been important as seen as an enabler. Actually, digital in the world we operate now is actually seen as a core asset. A colleague of mine who works in the submarines part of the business actually had a fantastic phrase, which I've stolen with pride, which is saying that our platforms and services are only an accessory to the digital and tech inside them, which I quite like as a phraseology. But digital, says, is really fundamental, and the data layer that sits in everything we do, and we all tend to use AI on our own personal lives now, but it's even more important in the geopolitical environment because we're not just fighting wars with tanks and equipment and weapons, we're fighting in the cyber domain as well. So data and analysis of that and how we make decisions and how we fight in a cyber sense of the word is really fundamentally important and a key unfortunate consequence of the geopolitical environment we sit in today.
You mentioned the AI word, right, which in our profession and our industry is talked about an awful lot. I'm assuming in your role and given what we just said in terms of what it does, there must be lots of talk about that. I'd love to get your perspective of someone in a really senior role in such a large organisation focused on digital as to how you're thinking about AI and what your thought process is when you come to that topic.
So AI is very important, and it is a subcategory that we have as part of my category management facing organisation within procurement. But what I would say that AI isn't the answer to everything per se. It's really important that we get the data right. And sometimes we actually might need automation rather than AI. It's about really understanding what insights you're trying to achieve from the aspects that you're looking at in front of you. As we move forward, AI in procurement and commercial as a function, really important in how we operate. And I think it's going to really allow us to be using our brains more. So how do we get these tasks that we might wake up in the morning and actually think they might not be the things that really give us the joy during the day? We can put those aside and get automation or AI to be looking at that and really focus on strategy, relationships, negotiation, and how do we generate new thought leadership in what we're trying to achieve as well, I think is really fundamental. So those ways of working are in play now within the Ministry of Defence. We're really lucky to have some great capabilities, again, in a warfighting, but a back of office environment as well. And across the government commercial function, I have the pleasure of sitting on the Digital Commercial Centre of Excellence. And one of the key areas we look at there is how do we support the government commercial function and our professionals within the function in AI implementation in their own organisation. So we've got some great statement of work checkers. We've got some other fantastic tooling we're looking at across a wide variety of the source to contract landscape and how we help to make better decisions and gain insights from our end-to-end procurement cycles and contract management as well as part of that. But for me, I think AI will mean the world of careers will be changing. It will be helping us to focus our skill sets on everybody being digitally literate, whether you're a commercial person or in the wider sort of citizenship as part of society. But it's a great place that we can We're using our brains to be having those more value-adding conversations, but it is really fundamental that we swap our skills programs to support us in doing that as well, and making sure we still got pathways in for those in early careers as well, to make sure that they can add that value as part of the commercial function for the future.
Yeah. We hear from lots of people, there's a lot of hype in AI, there's a ton of stuff being talked about. When your ambition of trying to understand how the tools can be used to kind of free your people up to focus, how are you unpicking that difference between what is real and what is hype? And actually, I guess perhaps more, and maybe unfairly, but the Ministry of Defence and perhaps government more generally might sometimes be considered to be a bit slow in the uptake of these things, or very kind of risk averse. And part of tech is embracing risk. I'd love to understand a little bit more about, in your role, how you're looking at that.
So I think again, myth busting moment. We're probably one of the most risk leaning actually in AI. We're the biggest spender in AI in the whole of government. But it's one of those ones where you put the security aspects on these things, and we do have to have the right tools that sit on our on-premise systems and draw data in, but don't share that back out to help us make our decisions. So we are actually really quite risk leaning in that sense of how we use AI. But we also help our teams to do that as well. So we developed in the past year an AI buying guide, which looks at how do you should you be buying AI, or do you just need the right data and automation? But actually, how do you do that in a safe, responsible way and a scalable way as well? Because if you're going to be looking at different AI tooling, you need to be able to employ that out for the whole workforce to be able to support them in their decision making in whatever sphere they're doing that in as well. So really fundamental. But what I'd always say about any sort of tooling is that the tooling, you have all the amazing tooling in the world, but it's actually the people and the culture that make the difference. If people haven't got the appetite to want to do it, the trust in the tooling themselves, whether it's a job security perspective or whether it's also a trust in the outcomes and decisions you might get from that as well, people just aren't going to be able to want to use it or won't take that up. So for us, it's a really big cultural transformation program as to how we bring that in. And we are also looking at that as part of our corporate services modernisation program more broadly across the organisation, about all the different types of tooling. But AI in particular is one that I think from a demographic perspective can be seen really different from different characteristics of individuals, and we want to make sure we increase the uptake on it as much as we can to deliver the outcomes we need for defence.
Victoria, you touched on that idea, that the myth busting, that actually you guys are leaning into the risk and taking the chances. I'm always really interested in terms of that idea of how particularly big organisations like MOD access innovation in the markets. I mean, again, potentially, I guess even more so in digital, where there's huge amounts of innovation, and particularly maybe at the smaller supplier level. Again, I'd love to understand how you are looking at that, and how big organisations like yours buy innovation from innovative, perhaps smaller suppliers.
The innovation is fundamental to us, and a big thing I always talk about digital and tech is we want to be buying tomorrow's technology today. And to do that, it's all about, as you say, engaging with the market, organisations of all sizes, of diverse thinking in different sectors as well. And one of the key things we're trying to do at the moment is really gain the appetite of suppliers that might not have thought about doing business with defence, or government for that matter, and bringing in best practices from different sectors and best thinking and a best athlete approach for them to collaborate together and get those solutions. So we've got some really different ways of working we've employed, both risk leaning, but also help us as a consequence to gain that access to that innovation, where we are doing early market engagement, as you kind of would expect, as part of procurement and category management approach to horizon scanning. We've also got a brilliant programme that I have the pleasure of being SRO, so responsible owner for, called Commercial X. And this is all about, for procurements under 50 million and less than 2 years. So for that's us, relatively low value for us, which we're a nice place to be saying that, that we take a little bit more risk about how do we approach the market and be myth busting a lot of it. So we are governed as part of government by the procurement regulations, but actually there's lots of myths around those, and what levers you have to actually gain organisations in at pace and scale. And so we are, as part of this programme, using all the levers at our disposal to really catalyse and bring pace to bringing innovation into the organisation. And also with a real focus of, we can get some great ideas at low technology readiness levels, so sort of prototype type things. But actually a lot of those die on the vine and bridge this thing called the valley of death. Getting to something scalable and productionised that can go across the whole of defence is really challenging. And one of the great things about the programme we've put in place, it helps those SMEs to particularly scale across that boundary and make a real difference to them, not necessarily just being an SME in the future, but hopefully, and if they wish to do so, be a larger organisation in the future. It's working really well. And one of the things we launched again this year with Secretary of State was a thing called the Defence Tech Scaler. So some of these actual contract vehicles that go with that as a standardised approach to helping SMEs have a swift route to contracting once they secure further scale work with us as well.
Victoria, it sounds fascinating, and I think there'll be people from big companies around the world listening to this that would be massively kind of relevant for as well. You mentioned that idea that it's busting some myths in that Commercial X program and then bridging that gap to this. Could you bring that to life a little bit for us in terms of what are some of the bigger myths that you found and kind of how suppliers have responded to this new approach to working with you as an organisation?
Yeah, I think the first one is quite a simple one. It's about market engagement. We had colleagues who said, no, we can't talk to the market unless we're in a procurement. Yeah. And then when we are, we can only say certain things. Or the other way around, they were talking quite openly with some, and it might also prejudice people's competition as well. So that was quite an easy one to do, going a myth busting fact sheet of going, when can I talk to suppliers? How can I talk to suppliers? More importantly, how can I best talk to suppliers to get the right insights out and also get them to collaborate with each other? And as part of that, also, we did come across that we needed to make sure we protect the intellectual property of those suppliers as part of those conversations. You can get lots of brilliant organisations in the same room together at the same point, but getting them to share their ideas and innovations with each other, they need to feel comfortable and be protected to do that. So we've put some really great frameworks in place, actually in the wider digital team, in addition to Commercial X, to help have that as a new way of working. So some of those myths, I think, we were myths. There's also bits about structured approach to help make a difference in those aspects. The other side of things is around our terms and conditions. We have in defence a standard set, which is great, but they are written in very defensy language and also in government related language, which if you're an SME, you might not have commercial support in your organisation, and you might have to pay for legal support to try and understand some of these things maybe. And similarly, those from non-traditional government sectors as well, similarly, interpretation of those is really important to make sure we're all set up on the same page for success at the start of a contract. So again, we collaborated with SMEs and with non-traditional suppliers to myth bust the current terms and conditions and create a simplified plain language set of terms and conditions, which we can then use at pace with suppliers, which breaks down the barriers for them to enter with us and understand how to work with us, but then also sets us up for success, that everybody's on the same page throughout that journey with us as well. So it's been another great thing we've looked at. We've also looked at R&D exemptions and policies and things like that, and myth busted a lot of those. That there was an expectation that actually there was some real barriers around scalability, as I mentioned. So again, myth busted those, which helps, as I say, that bridge that valley of death, and lots of other things I can mention too.
Amazing. I'm assuming, Victor, so lots of work on the supply side to kind of engage that community into this process. I'm guessing quite a lot of internal change for government. I mean, I'm guessing you were being quite challenging to the way government traditionally looks at this stuff. How did you go about that piece, the internal change side of it?
Absolutely. So I think, as you say, with any change, you want to try and bring everybody on that journey with you. And I think it's important to co-produce as you do that as well. So as part of it, the teams work across the whole of the defence enterprise and have been developing a lot of these things in consultation with and in workshop with those colleagues across the organisation. I think doing anything different and new can sometimes feel unsettling for those who are comfortable with the status quo, and also maybe relied on it as well as something that they felt supported them in their role. So looking in a different lens on these things I can be challenging, but I'm really pleased to say we've got some brilliant advocates throughout the organisation, and the more we get our technical and project stakeholders talking about these reforms and how it's really made a difference, it's really helped get colleagues across the whole organisation on board with joining us on that journey as well. And the vision really is for having these different reformed ways of working, and digitally more broadly, we've got 11 different reformed ways we've done over the past couple of years now, that we've now put into the Defence Industrial Strategy, which is all about how do we deliver our defence commitments more broadly. So we've proved it can work, and actually we've productised it and helped support our colleagues with training and development with that. And those are now going to be rolled out across the whole of defence as well, which is a really fantastic place to be. But it's very much about bringing, say, people along on that journey with you, keep up the communications, and that's a two-way dialogue on it as well. Because I say with all these reforms, people will find things that are great about it, but we'll also uncover things that we need to implement and improve as we go along as well. So it's a journey we're going on as we move forward.
Okay. The thing I was really interested to talk to you about is social value. So again, for our international listeners, the UK government in its procurement processes has an allocation of a certain amount of scoring to something called social value, which is about how, very simplistically, how the government can use its kind of procurement spend to impact in a social value sense. I'd love to, again, have an understanding of how you as Defence Digital are looking at that topic.
So social value personally, it's always been really important to me in my personal life. And you mentioned some of the charitable kind of aspects I've done, but also when I was industry as well.
Yeah.
So we are really lucky, I think, in government to have the regulated social value criteria. And one of the things bit of feedback we had from industry was it's really important for them to be intentional with what they're doing from a social value outcomes perspective. And having come in and looked with the team at the different criteria and KPIs we were asking our supply chain colleagues to deliver as part of our tenders and our contracts, it was really key that actually we have a standardized set that really helps deliver on defence and government's social value outcomes, whether they be environmental, diversity, prosperity, or any of the other category areas as well. So we standardize what they call the MAC. So these are the key performance indicators and outcomes you're trying to achieve for each of our digital categories. And we operate across hardware, networks, space, professional services, and software, cloud and AI. So that our suppliers can then really be intentful with their investment in their money and resources to help deliver those commitments. And we can really show an impact at scale as to how we're delivering on that broader ESG and social value agenda for government.
Victoria, I mean, probably my last question, just conscious of time, as you've been in the role, as we said, a little while now, you've obviously achieved some great things. I'm just interested, as you look forward from where you are now, kind of what's on your mind, what's on your to-do list, and what does the next period look like for you?
So I think we've achieved a lot. We're 2 and a bit years into our 5-year digital commercial strategy. So lots more reforms to come, and excited about how we present those and get those working, not just for defence, but also I have the pleasure of sitting on the Digital Commercial Centre of Excellence Executive Committee, which sits as part of DSIT, so our Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. And that's all about how do we buy digital better across the whole of government. So really pleased at the moment that we're able to share a lot of the good practices and reforms that we've put in place. But actually, I'm really excited about how, as government, we can raise the bar in digital acquisition, because as we mentioned at the start, it is one of the fundamental ways in which we can improve the outcomes for government, but also, and more importantly, improve the outcomes for citizens' experience as well. So great to be able to transfer how we do that more broadly. I'm also really excited for the function as well. So the government commercial function has been in place for about sort of 8 years or so now. And we've got a really brilliant cadre of people in and continue to open the doors to welcome other colleagues in as well. But we are in a place where we've got an opportunity to really change and up the gear and make a real difference from a functional perspective. I think we're really lucky that our chief commercial officers, we will have a seat at the table in our executive committees for the relevant departments. But it's how can we bring that even more to the fore with architecting our supply chains and really ensuring we have preparedness in place for all of our critical national infrastructure across government, and joining those dots up across departments really strongly to help deliver that too.
Fascinating. Victoria, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation today. I really appreciate it. It was great to get your perspective on some really important topics that I think are hugely resonating for anyone in a senior CPO role in any industry. So thank you for your time. It's really appreciated.
Pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please give us a click on the follow button on your chosen podcast platform. We'd also love to hear your views on either future topics, or indeed if you've got any thoughts on future guests that we should look to get onto the podcast. Thanks again. See you next time.